When I first found the room, it didn't feel like luck so much as inevitability, as if every bad decision I had ever made had slowly pushed me toward that door. The rent was far too cheap for the city, and the landlord never asked why I needed a place so urgently, or why I didn't want to be found. He barely looked at me while unlocking the door, and when he spoke, it felt rehearsed, like the room had already decided what he would say. "You won't need much," he told me, his hand still resting on the handle, as if he didn't want to step inside himself. The room was small but unnervingly tidy, with a bed, a desk, a narrow closet, and a single window pressed against a brick wall that blocked out the sky. There were no decorations, no personal touches, and no mirrors anywhere, which should have bothered me more than it did. I checked the ceiling and corners out of habit, but there were no cameras, no wires, and no signs of surveillance at all. That first night, exhaustion swallowed me whole, and I fell into a deep sleep that felt heavier than normal, like sinking instead of resting. I woke suddenly to a sound that cut cleanly through my dreams, sharp enough to pull me fully awake in a single second. Click. It wasn't loud, and it wasn't mechanical in an obvious way, but it carried intention, like something choosing the exact moment to act. I lay still in the darkness, listening for footsteps or movement, but the room remained silent and perfectly calm. Eventually, I convinced myself it was just the building, settling, even though I knew pipes didn't sound deliberate. The second night, the sound returned at the exact same time, precise enough to feel scheduled rather than accidental. Click. This time I searched the room thoroughly, pulling furniture away from the walls, checking vents, and even tapping along the ceiling. There was nothing hidden anywhere, and that absence began to feel intentional, like the room wanted me to notice it. By the third night, I refused to sleep and stared at the ceiling for hours, counting my breaths and waiting for the moment. At exactly 2:13 a.m., the sound came again, and this time it was followed by a sensation I couldn't explain. It felt like awareness, like the room had realized I was conscious and was adjusting itself accordingly. The next morning, my laptop was already open when I woke, its screen glowing softly despite the fact that I always shut it down. A new folder sat on the desktop without a name, plain and unremarkable, as if it had always belonged there. Inside were video files labeled with dates that matched every night I had slept in the room. My hands shook as I clicked the most recent one, and the loading screen felt far too slow for something I didn't want to see. The videos showed my room from above, perfectly centered, watching me sleep from an angle that shouldn't have existed. I watched myself turn in bed, listened to my own breathing, and felt detached from my body in a way that made me nauseous. The recording quality was flawless, clearer than any cheap hidden camera could have produced. Then, inside the video, the sound happened again. Click. I slammed the laptop shut and tore the room apart in a panic, ripping open drawers and checking every surface until my hands hurt. There was still nothing, no device and no explanation that could make sense of what I had seen. That night, I didn't return to the room and instead stayed in a cafe until sunrise, watching strangers just to remind myself I existed. When I finally went back, the air inside the room felt different. Not hostile but patient, like it had simply been paused. As I packed my things, my laptop turned on by itself, the fan spinning softly as if it had been waiting. A new video file appeared on the screen, dated tonight, with a timestamp from several hours in the future. Every instinct told me not to open it, but curiosity and fear felt indistinguishable at that point. The video showed the room empty, silent, and perfectly framed, as if it were preparing for something. Then, the door opened in the video, and I watched myself walk inside with the same confused expression I wore in that moment. The camera angle adjusted slightly, focusing more clearly on my face, learning details I didn't know it needed. I moved out that same day, leaving the key behind and never speaking to the landlord again. For months afterward, nothing happened, and I slowly convinced myself stress had distorted my memory. Life moved on, and the room became something I only thought about late at night when I couldn't sleep. Eventually, curiosity pulled me back, and I opened the old laptop I had hidden away in a closet. The folder was still there, larger than before, filled with files I didn't remember creating. The new videos showed me sleeping in unfamiliar rooms, places I didn't recognize but somehow knew I had been. In one recording, I was crying quietly, my face twisted with emotions I didn't remember feeling. In another, I was coughing violently in my sleep, my body reacting to something unseen. Each video felt closer, clearer, and more intimate, like the recordings were improving over time. The final file was different from the others, lacking a date or any familiar label. It was titled, "Final Recording Complete." My heart pounded as I opened it, already knowing it would be worse than the rest. The video showed me lying perfectly still, eyes open and unblinking, staring directly into the lens. I wasn't breathing, wasn't moving, and yet I felt aware, like that version of me was still watching. That night, I destroyed the laptop completely, smashing the hard drive until it was nothing but fragments. I believed that would end it, because problems are supposed to have endings. Last night, in my new apartment, I heard the sound again while lying in bed. Click. It came from above me, from the ceiling, from the exact place where there was nothing to see. I didn't get up, didn't search for cameras, and didn't even turn on the lights. I already knew there wouldn't be anything there, because the room was never recording me in the way a camera records images. It was studying me, memorizing patterns, routines, and weaknesses with quiet precision. The videos weren't proof, they were progress reports. Every recording showed improvement, refinement, and understanding. Somewhere, the room was learning how long I stayed awake and how deeply I slept. It learned how my breathing changed when I was afraid. It learned how still I became when I felt watched. And once it finishes learning someone, it doesn't need them anymore. The room doesn't keep people. It keeps information. It doesn't haunt. It replaces. I don't know what happened to the version of me in that final video. I only know it wasn't meant to come back. Somewhere, in a place I will never find again, the room still exists. It looks empty from the outside, waiting for the next door to open. The landlord is probably still there, repeating the same words to someone new. "You won't need much," he will say, and he will mean it, because the room already has what it wants. It doesn't need belongings, furniture, or decoration. It only needs time, time to observe, time to record, time to learn. I hear the sound more often now, sometimes during the day, sometimes when I'm not even home. Click. It no longer waits for me to sleep. It doesn't need darkness anymore. I think it's almost finished. I think it knows enough now. Somewhere, a new folder has already been created. It doesn't have a date yet. It doesn't have a title. It doesn't need either, because it already knows my name. It knows my face. It knows my routine. And now, it knows where I live. I don't think it plans to watch much longer. I think it's ready to replace me.